This will begin our discussion that will jumpstart us into the first part of your assignment. We're going to break down the idea of a logo versus a brand and how that relates back to the visual and conceptual components that you'll be building this semester. So, first of all, if we take a look at these different terms, different pieces of the actual visual logo mark, typically we have the mark, the symbol, and the logo. So, for example, the mark or the trademark is that unique name or symbol used to identify a product and distinguish it from others. A symbol is typically something that stands for or suggests something else by relationship, association, or convention. So, think of traditional preconceived devices like the symbol for the restroom symbol or, stop sign within itself. We see the red shape, and we know that that means stop, even if it doesn't have the words associated with it. So that's a symbol. When we think about symbols that are, pre-programmed in our brain, we interact with symbols a lot. And then we talk about the logo, which is the unique type or lettering that spells out the name of the company or product. And then we talk about the combination mark, that is the symbol and the logo used together. So let's take a closer look at that. So if we break this down, if we think of Pepsi, the actual little circle here is the mark or the symbol. The logo slash mark is the word Pepsi itself in this typeface that we've all come to know really well. And then when we put those together, that is typically what we call the combination mark. Now, I'm not going to make you guys memorize all these different things, but as designers and creatives, you should understand that there's a difference and understand how they function in regards to making up visual identity. So typically people would just look at this and call this a logo, but as designers and creatives, we need to know the technical terms and know that there's a difference. And I myself will probably flop back and forth and call anything a logo, but we need to understand that when we build marks, when we build logos and identity for a brand, that there is a difference and they do have their own functions. Okay, using this again, we think of the nonprofit United Way. This is their mark and symbol. This is their logo, and this is the combination mark. So when we put the two together, combination mark. So thinking about the history of a logo, just to give you guys a little bit of background, when people started trading, like when the trade really started heavily back in the 12th, 13th centuries, people started marking their products and goods with coats of arms, with insignias. And this is when we first start to see, and this is the seal of the East India Trading Company, which you guys are aware of from history. You've heard of that one before. But when we think of the idea of original logo, this is kind of how it started. People started marking their products. They realized that distinguishing their product from others was important. So this is kind of how the idea of marking and branding and logos got started. So again, brand versus a logo. So I want you guys to think for a second. When we talk about brand versus a logo, think about Coke versus Pepsi. Okay, because that's an easy one that everybody can relate to. Think about how Coke positions themselves in the market, how they advertise, how they promote versus Pepsi, right? If we think of Pepsi, they've been very Americana oriented in the past. They do the, you know, classic American Pepsi, right? They've centered their branding around a lot of the idea of this classic American tradition, whereas Coke started like that, back 10 to 15 years ago. I mean, Coke's been around for a long time, but back 10 to 15 years ago, they were kind of classic Americana. They were also kind of in that wheelhouse, but in the last 10 years, Coke has really expanded the idea of universality, inclusion, acceptance, because Coke is all around the world. If you go to another country, they have Coke. It just may look or taste a little different. But they really, think about probably 5 or 10 years ago now, they've come up with, find your name on the Coke, right? And then they released another phase where they had, more international, more ethnically diverse names, right? They really started to include everybody. It became a global initiative, not just names like Joe and Joe and Amanda, right? You found names like Julio, or trying to come up with some other names. But, think of just that in itself, changes the way Coke is perceived in a consumer's mind versus Pepsi, right? And if we think of how their commercials are, just in general, how they market themselves, they both position themselves differently in the market, even though they're selling a similar product. But that in itself ties back to its brand. So again, what is a brand? What is a logo? So, brand versus logo. In general, we talk about the brand being the overall personal atmosphere. The brand establishes its attributes, ideals, and attitude to the consumer. And then the logo is the visual identity that's established to represent that brand. So, again, thinking of, since you guys will be dealing with nonprofits this semester, we'll use nonprofits as an example. Thinking of the American Cancer Society versus the Alzheimer's Association. They both fight and promote for health causes, but in completely different ways to a variety of audiences. So each of them have their own brand makeup and they have their own visual identity makeup. So again, brand versus logo, an example. So this is the mission statement from the United Way. I'll just read the top line there for you. United Way fights for the health, education, and financial stability of every person in every community. So that's their mission statement. That's their driving force. This is their logo. And when we see this logo, we know it's United Way. But all of these visuals tie in to this mission statement in some sort of way. Okay. So again, continuing with United Way, they have, and this comes from their brand guide. I pulled this. They have their own manifesto. So again, they talk about how they're problem solvers, how they're united together, and the things that they try to do and advocate for. So the philosophy, the conceptual framework, that's part of the brand. Okay. So again, brand framework talks about their vision, talks about their mission, their brand promise, their brand positioning. So United Way fights for the education and financial stability of every person in every community. And then the brand idea. In order to live better, we must live united. So all of these ideals, again, are the driving force to how they visually represent themselves in the market. All right, so we are going to stop here. I just wanted to break down the idea of brand versus logo a little more, and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more specifically about what you guys will be focusing on.